here with us. Tom was here since before 10 o'clock this morning, and without objection, I'd like to go to Mr. Garrett for his questioning now, if we could.
Thank you a lot, Mr. Chairman, and I really appreciate this hearing, and I appreciate the work of the Voice of America, let alone Mr. Van Sesteren. The Voice of America, when properly levied, has been instrumental to the freedom of literally hundreds of millions of people, and that shouldn't be underestimated. But not properly levied, we probably are pouring bad money after good. But in this circumstance, we're on the right side of history. As it relates to the points made by Mr. Pomper, I find both agreement and disagreement. And Ms. Van Sesteren said earlier, Mr. Chair, that we should use all of the above. I wholeheartedly agree. Having said that, the questions as it relates to the UN Human Rights Commission, et cetera, exacerbate some of us because, candidly, those bodies have been used to stymie progress in the right direction, right? I mean, when you have a body wherein there are members like the DRC, Angola, Pakistan, who horribly exploit ethnic minorities, China, who has imprisoned north of 1 million Uyghur and oppressed that population, Saudi Arabia, who I need not speak to, and Cuba, who maimed members of the U.S. State Department staff on the UNHRC, maybe their credibility is in question. Having said that, work with the tools you have, not the tools you wish you had. Refugee camps breed hopelessness, hopelessness breeds extremism, and extremism stymies the most fundamental of human rights, that being paramount, the right to life, amongst others. I spent 8 months in a tent standing between Bosnian Serbs and Muslims in the Army when I was younger, better looking, and had more hair. And I think it's been poignant that some members of this committee, Mr. Chair, have pointed out the role of China in these egregious circumstances. There is a role of China, some of which I can't speak about in this forum. How dare China wag its finger at us when they continue to perpetrate this aforementioned violations against the Uyghurs, against the Falun Gong, against those who would practice the Christian faith. And yet we need to understand how China works. China drives wedges between potential alliances. There's probably no more important region in the next 30 years of our world than ASEAN. And Burma maintains Myanmar maintains the second largest standing army in that region after Vietnam. They are wholly dependent upon the Chinese. And the Chinese have interest, again, that I can't discuss in this forum, in some of the atrocities that have been perpetrated. We need to speak the truth to that. I understand, as Mr. Pomper said, and I'll paraphrase, that sometimes it's hard to move a great power. You will not accomplish anything you do not try to do. So we need to try. Understanding the Chinese drive wedges between potential alliances, use proxies to advance Chinese interests, create regional vacuums that the Chinese can fill, and then lie, lie, lie. That's the China paradigm. So what can we do here today? And this is a passion of mine. I've had the opportunity to work with Americans, both Muslim and non-Muslim, in groups like our AIM to send aid to the Rohingya, building wells, building houses, building bridges. Because when children can't get across a raging torrent during a monsoon, then you have a secondary child separation. But we need to worry about what we can do, and we need to understand where we come from. We have Dred Scott, we had Jim Crow, we had the first Article I with 3/5 of a person. We've improved because the preamble calls for forming a more perfect union, not establishing a perfect one. We should demand the same of those with whom we work. Global Magnitsky, it's been hit on. I have to tip my hat repeatedly to Chairman Royce, to Chris Smith, to members across the aisle. We should walk this dog all the way to the end of the line and pound everybody we can. We can do that unilaterally, and we should. And I've heard, and in fact, I've called for in this committee the revocation of Ms. Aung San Suu Kyi's Nobel Peace Prize, but we can't control that. What we can control is the Congressional Gold Medal that was awarded to Aung San Suu Kyi in 2008 and then given to her in person in this town 400 yards from where we sit by this body. It is the highest honor bestowed by Congress and has been enjoyed by Pope John Paul, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Ronald Reagan, Raoul Wallenberg, who saved tens of thousands, Mother Teresa and the Dalai Lama, and Aung San Suu Kyi. So we can't control the Nobel Prize, but we can send a pretty loud signal. Now, I understand that there are complexities here, that Ms. Suu Kyi's hands at some level are tied, but silence at some point is complicity. And the words that she has spoken about democracy and freedom for individuals across communities ring hollow in light of her current inaction in the face of a massive, massive displacement and murder and rape and enslavement of human beings in her nation. So these are things we can do now. We need to ramp up Global Magnitsky. It is an amazing tool, and this body bestowed upon her an award enjoyed by the likes of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Mother Teresa, we should see immediately about revoking that, because that we can control. I'd yield back, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Garrett, thank you. We go now to Mike McCall, Chairman of the Homeland Security Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing.